She was only 16, armed with nothing but a quiet mind and a love for chess. But when she walked into the room, everything stopped. Whispers filled the air, chairs shifted, and the doors of the local club nearly closed in her face because of the color of her skin. They told her she didn't belong, that this world of strategy and intellect wasn't for her. But they didn't know what she carried inside, something that would silence every voice of doubt. What happens when a girl society tries to erase faces the ultimate test, blindfolded against the Grandmaster himself? Her name was Sophia, 16 years old, quiet, thoughtful, and far too used to being underestimated. She grew up in a modest neighborhood, where her mother worked 2 jobs and her father had once taught her that chess wasn't just a game. It was a mirror of life. He told her that every piece had value, even the smallest pawn, and Sophia believed him. Most evenings, while other kids her age were glued to phones or running across playgrounds, Sophia sat at a chipped wooden table, moving black and white pieces across a worn board. To her, the world melted away when she played. She didn't just see moves, she saw patterns, possibilities, entire futures unfolding in her mind. But outside her home, the world wasn't as kind. The local chess club was famous in town. Its players wore their victories like medals, and its doors were guarded by tradition, privilege, and silent rules about who belonged. Sophia had walked past those doors countless times, her heart pounding at the thought of playing inside. She knew she was ready, but deep down, she also knew what others would see first. Not her skill, not her determination, but her skin. Still, she gathered her courage one autumn afternoon and stepped inside. She wore her favorite sweater, clutching the chess set her father had given her years ago. The room was silent for a moment as all eyes turned toward her. Men in suits, boys from wealthy schools, parents sipping coffee on the sidelines. To them, she was an outsider. But to Sophia, this was the battleground where she would prove she belonged. The silence that followed Sophia's entrance didn't last long. A cough from the corner, a whisper that traveled across the room like wildfire, and then the subtle shake of a head from one of the organizers. He looked at her, then at the battered chess set in her hands and smirked. "This isn't the beginner's club," he said flatly, his words loud enough for everyone to hear. Sophia's cheeks burned, but she didn't back away. She simply placed her father's chess set on the nearest table. The pieces clicked softly as she opened the box, a sound swallowed by the laughter that followed. One boy, no older than 17, leaned back in his chair and muttered, "She doesn't even belong here. Let her try, though. She'll embarrass herself in 2 moves." His friends chuckled, throwing glances at Sophia like she was entertainment instead of competition. She ignored them, though her hands trembled as she arranged the pieces. Every eye in the room was on her now, not with curiosity, but with doubt, with dismissal. They saw her skin, her sweater from the thrift store, her quiet demeanor, and they had already written her story. The organizer cleared his throat. "You can watch, but you won't be playing. These matches are for members only." It was an excuse, a shield of formality. Everyone knew the truth. Membership wasn't the real barrier. It was who she was. But before Sophia could step back, an older man in the corner spoke up. His voice was calm but commanding. "Let her play." The room shifted. The man was none other than the reigning club champion, a local legend whose games were whispered about like folklore. His challenge left the organizers no choice. Reluctantly, they set up the match. Sophia sat down, her heart pounding, as her opponent's eyes locked on hers. The first few moves were played in tense silence. Sophia moved quickly, confidently, while her opponent tested her defenses. Whispers rippled around the room as she countered each attack with precision. The laughter died down. The smirks faded. Something strange was happening. She was winning. But just as the tide began to turn, someone interrupted. "If she really thinks she belongs here," one of the boys scoffed, "let's make it fair. Blindfold her. Let's see if she can still keep up." The suggestion was cruel, meant to humiliate her, meant to turn this moment of triumph into a spectacle. But Sophia didn't flinch. She closed the box, pulled the black silk scarf from her bag, a scarf her father once used for training, and tied it around her eyes. The room erupted in murmurs of disbelief, and with the world around her swallowed in darkness, she whispered to herself, "Every pawn has a purpose." The match began again. The room fell into stunned silence as Sophia sat blindfolded, her breathing steady, her hands poised above the board she could no longer see. Across from her, the Grandmaster studied her with narrowed eyes, clearly torn between disbelief and the quiet urge to crush her. Around them, the crowd pressed in closer, whispering, waiting for the inevitable mistake that would expose her as nothing more than a pretender. But Sophia wasn't pretending. With every move called out by the arbiter, she replayed the board in her mind. She saw it more clearly than those staring directly at it. To her, the pawns weren't just pieces of wood. They were soldiers, protectors, the foundation of an army. The knights leapt in her memory, bishops carved their long diagonals, and the queen swept across the board with power. Move by move, she dismantled his strategy. Gasps rippled through the room as she countered every trap he set, her answers arriving without hesitation. Knight to e5. Queen to h4. Each call of her move was a strike against the doubt that had filled the club moments before. The Grandmaster leaned forward now, his face tense. The smirks in the crowd were gone, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. Even the boys who had laughed earlier were silent, shifting uncomfortably as the impossible began to unfold. And then, it happened. With only a handful of pieces left on the board, Sophia's voice cut through the room like thunder. Checkmate. The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The arbiter hesitated, glanced at the board, then nodded slowly. She's right. A collective gasp echoed around the room. The Grandmaster slumped back in his chair, defeated not just by a 16-year-old girl, but by the very person they had tried to exclude. Sophia pulled off the blindfold. Her eyes scanned the room, not with anger, but with quiet strength. And in that silence, for the first time, they saw her not as an outsider, but as a champion. The silence after Sophia's checkmate stretched longer than the game itself. Some tried to dismiss it as luck, others shook their heads in denial, but no one could erase what had just happened. A black teenager, turned away at the door, had defeated the Grandmaster blindfolded in the very place they said she didn't belong. Slowly, a few people began to clap. It was hesitant at first, scattered, almost reluctant. But then it spread, filling the room with a rhythm that no one could stop. For once, the whispers weren't about exclusion. They were about astonishment. The same organizer who had told her she couldn't play now stood frozen, his authority shattered. He avoided her eyes, knowing the rules he had used to keep her out had crumbled in front of everyone. Sophia didn't gloat, didn't shout. She simply packed her pieces into her worn box, the sound of wood against wood echoing louder than any applause. For her, the victory wasn't about proving herself to them. It was about proving to every young black kid who had ever been told you don't belong here, that intelligence, talent, and brilliance don't come with a color. But outside that club, beyond those walls, the reality remained. Millions of others like Sophia face closed doors every single day. Classrooms, workplaces, opportunities guarded by invisible barriers. Her triumph was a moment of light, but it also revealed the darkness still surrounding it. So the question remains, how many more Sophias will have to fight twice as hard, prove themselves twice over, just to be seen as equal? And how many voices will it take before the world finally admits every pawn has a purpose? What do you think Sophia proved that day? Tell me in the comments.